Hello, you've reached Heaven's Help Desk. Thank you for calling in. Hey, what's up? This is where you ask questions and we answer them like we think they would answer them in heaven if you ask those questions. My name is Chris Childs, VP of Programming here, and I got this is a great list of questions that you members ask. If you want to ask a question in this show, join Swedenborg Foundation membership. You can join YouTube membership here on this channel. It's like right by the video there. And then we can listen to what you're wondering about too. But really good question. You guys are going to love hearing these. And I got a great panel who's discussing these with me. With me is Cara Dom, who's a Latin consultant, as well as on our comment responding team. How are you doing, Cara?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. As you can see, I haven't taken down my Christmas tree yet. Got to keep the circle going.
No, everybody's got their issues. You know, everyone's got to regenerate. Good. Great to have you here. We also have with us Karin Childs, who is our community care manager and writes for all the shows you see here. Hello, Karin. Is that your Christmas tree behind you?
It is not. We did take down our Christmas tree. I'm doing really well. A little snow today in the Chicago area that I was shoveling with my husband, and it was very pretty. And I'm excited about digging into these questions. They're really good ones.
Let's show not tell here with these questions. First, I love this first one because it is deep into Swedenborg. It's deep into Swedenborg. This is from Fred, who asks, with regard to regeneration, Swedenborg mentions that not everyone, this is a quote, who undergoes regeneration reaches this stage, the sixth stage. Some, the great majority these days, arrive only at the first stage, some only at the second, some at the third, fourth, or fifth, and very few at the sixth, almost no one at the seventh. This quote is from Secrets of Heaven, Volume 1, Section 13. And his question is, does Swedenborg mean people on earth before they die? What about the angels? Have the angels reached stage 6 or even stage 7? That's from Swedenborg's Secrets of Heaven, Portable New Century Edition. Okay, so he gave us like the reference there, and he's got this question. Any background, if anyone's not familiar, there's this process called regeneration. You know, the creation story, God said, let there be light, day 1, day 2. That's about the stages of spiritual rebirth that bring you from being formless and void into heaven. But Swedenborg here says like almost nobody makes it to these more advanced stages. Is he talking about even in heaven or people here? I have a way that I always read this, but I'm curious to hear what you both think about this. Karin, what's the answer?
I love the question. And yeah, Swedenborg doesn't specify right in this number. And I had kind of been thinking about, on earth, but when I was reflecting on this question, it seems to me, just from the greater context of what Swedenborg describes about heaven and heaven having various levels to it, that people can choose how far they want to advance, that only the highest heaven, the celestial heaven, is really at stage 7, which is at total rest. They're not, they totally know that God is in charge of everything and all the good comes from God and all the truth and everything. And stage 6 is more where you know that God is in charge, but you still have a little feeling of your own, you still feel like you're doing things yourself, and still have to then, kind of have a higher part of your mind keeping control of a lower part of your mind. And it seems like maybe the spiritual heaven might equate with stage 6, where they're not just totally in the restful flow. It is nothing like what we struggle with on earth, but they still are like kind of going through a step of the intellect acknowledging okay, God's in charge. I'm thinking about it myself. Whereas the stage 7 or the celestials are just feeling the reality of that so directly. And then I was thinking about what about the natural heaven? Our Creator is so loving. Our Creator has continued to expand heaven to include, make it, you don't have to be super advanced. You just have to have the basics to be in heaven. And I wondered if the natural heaven is more like stage 4, which is, Swedenborg does say, stage 4 in the creation story is when the sun and moon appear. And that is when you're acknowledging that there is a God. And Swedenborg does say that people who enter heaven have come to the point, like you do need to have this idea that there is a God. And anyone who crossed over and wasn't sure about that, they will go through processes where they'll say, oh yeah, love is God and things like that. So I'm thinking that you have to get to stage 1 in this life, which is simply believing that there's a goodness that transcends your own ego. Like there's a goodness, a greater good than just your own concerns. And those are my thoughts about the other stages. So I wonder what you guys think. I
don't know. I just thought stage 5 clinger. Don't people say that? We got a stage 5 clinger. No. Okay. Okay. No, I do have a reaction to that, but Cara, I wanted to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, without having studied it up, I sort of thought that was talking about on Earth too. My initial thought is that I don't fret about the levels anymore, which is not really an answer to the question. Just because I've just gotten to the point of thinking, the Lord has us all exactly where we need to be at all times. And it's not like we're lesser than if we're in stage 5 or 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. We're just in the place that is right for us. So.
But what do you what's the highest level you can get to with the Christmas tree still being up? I mean, like there's got to be an upper limit. No, I had the same reaction as you, Cara, and that he's talking, because I read that passage many times and I just assume he's talking about people in the world. I think what puts me in that direction, he says these days, the vast majority these days. If he's talking about angels, you're talking about all the time. There's not really these days with angels, because you got people there rubbing elbows with people from thousands of years prior. And I do wonder, it's like karate maybe. So let's say when you go to karate, when I was little, I went to karate class, and it's like there's like, I don't remember the order. There's yellow belt, there's purple belt, there's green belt, there's brown belt. You go up. By the time you get to brown belt, though, there's actually 3 stages of brown belt. And it's like harder to get from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 of brown belt than it is to get from like green to yellow. But when you get to black belt, there was 10 stages of black belt. So I think about, because if you were talking about there's 7 stages of regeneration, and let's say angels in the highest parts of heaven are at stage 7, they're not like done, because Swedenborg is very clear that you never stop growing in love and wisdom. So it must be that, like, there's plenty to do. It's not like, all right, I almost got to 7 and then I'm done. But yeah, if he's saying that a vast majority of these days only arrive at the first stage, I would think, my sense is like, if you've, like you were saying, Karin, if you've oriented yourself in the direction of, I'm trying to be good, and goodness is something that transcends me, then thanks, Kathy. Kathy likes our thoughts about it and agrees. It's a great question. Then you're on your way, and you can be improved in the afterlife. You can move some levels in the afterlife. That's enough. You've like, okay, this is the way I'm going on the highway, and now I can, however that metaphor plays out. Cool. All right.
Yeah, good response by Nancy there. Right. Yeah, totally. It's nothing to fret about. It's just an interesting exercise in what are these stages, and do you have to get, and yeah, absolutely, Curtis, it's never finished, even if you're at stage 7. But yeah, it's just interesting to think what is the state of life of each of those stages, and how does that relate?
Before we go to our next question, I want to draw your attention to this graphic that sometimes appears up here. Swedenborg.com/donate. So we are a not-for-profit. The way that we're able to do what we do and bring this message out into the world that we think does a lot of good, hopefully you do too, is through donations. That link is in the description of this video. If you go there and make a donation, we get to keep 100% of that donation. There's no fees or anything from any third party. So if you want to help us do shows like this, Swedenborg.com/donate. Thank you. Question 2. This is Stephanie, who asks, my question is about whether there's a connection between the story of Abraham and God's demand that he sacrifice his only son in the crucifixion of Jesus. Somehow I think they are connected, and if so, I would like to know if Swedenborg wrote about it. So if anyone who's not familiar, isn't Abraham, there's a story of nearly sacrificing Isaac, his son. Is there a parallel to the idea of Jesus being the Son of God? Yeah, so what's going on with that? And did Swedenborg ever address that in particular?
Oh boy, did he ever. That's one of the stories in Genesis and most of Exodus. Swedenborg goes into intense detail about every little phrase. And
careful what you ask for. You know?
That's right. That's right. And he says, and I'm only just scratching the surface. So Stephanie, you are absolutely right in that. According to Swedenborg, yes, that story is about Jesus. Swedenborg says in Secrets of Heaven that this story of the near sacrifice of Isaac is about Jesus's heaviest, deepest trials by which he united his human nature with his divine nature, which is also the process by which he became able to save all of us. And I've heard some people speculate that it's because in the story, Abraham almost sacrifices Isaac, but then an angel is sent down from God and says, no, you don't have to do that. And then they find a ram caught in the thicket and they sacrifice the ram instead. And I've heard some people speculate that the ram is Jesus, but Swedenborg says, no, Abraham is Jesus and Isaac is another part of Jesus. So Abraham is the Lord's or Jesus's divine side that's more open to divinity and the whole plan of divinity. And Isaac is the human rationality that Jesus was developing as he grew up and was living in the world. And Moriah that they're supposed to go to do this sacrifice represents a state of trial, a state of spiritual struggles. And the mountain is divine love. And to offer Isaac as a sacrifice represents that this was the process of Jesus needed to consecrate this rationality, this rational part of his mind that he was developing, and consecrate it to his divine side, like make it sacred, make it divine. And he's the only person who can do that, develop a divine rationality that would be involved in saving us. And so so you could take that verse of Swedenborg, of Abraham being told to sacrifice his son and go to a mountain in Moriah to be saying, like the divine purpose is saying, take this human rationality and make it holy and divine by going through severe trials in a state of love for the human race. So that's the command that is being given to Abraham, is this dictate from deep within Jesus's divinity to say, go do this. And it would be intensely, intensely an intense trial that we can't even imagine. And there's so much that can be said. I'll just say a few more things because the details are so amazing and beautiful, because Abraham then prepares for this journey, and all the details that he does to prepare. It's Genesis says he got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 boys with him, I guess some servant boys, and Isaac his son, and split the pieces of wood for the burnt offering, and rose and went to the place that God had said. And each of those deep details is something about how Jesus prepared for these intense trials. So to get up early in the morning means to clothe himself in a state of peace and innocence. I felt like this too could help us know how to prepare for spiritual trials. So it was very interesting. Saddled his donkey means he prepared his earthly self. Taking 2 boys with him meant bringing along this earthly rationality that he had been developing, so that they could serve, because they were servant boys, serve his divine rationality, or his higher rationality that was going to be made divine. Brought some wood for a burnt offering, has to do with bringing along deserving righteousness, the goodness that was Jesus. So all these ways were ways that he prepared himself. And then the fact that Isaac was tied up on this altar meant that, like, the final stages of the trials, because Swedenborg says that, when you're just like at the end of an intense trial, you feel tied up, you feel tangled up, and that's what that symbolizes. And before that, there's this sort of heartbreaking moment in the story where Isaac is looking around saying, well, Father, where's the sacrifice? As if he doesn't know that he's going to be sacrificed. And Abraham says, God will see to an animal for the burnt offering, my son. And that symbolizes really what the question from Isaac is representing. Jesus wondering, from whence are going to come the people that I can consecrate, that I can regenerate, that I can make divine. And his deeper self is saying to that wondering part of him that doesn't know yet, God is going to provide the people. God is going to provide the people. And so there's the being tied up, the final stages, and then the angel coming down and saying, no, you don't need to sacrifice your son, represents the trial has ended, and there's consolation and there's comfort. And then the final thing is that they find this ram in the thicket, and the ram symbolizes spiritual members of the human race, and being caught in the thicket means they're entangled in earthly knowledge. And the ram being brought out and sacrificed, it's in the spiritual symbolism, it doesn't mean killed, it means made holy, sanctified, made holy. And so this is a symbol of, once Jesus had gone through these intense trials and united his divine and human sides more tightly, he could then make people holy, regenerate them. So there's a little taste of a whole lot of detail.
That is so fabulous, Karen. Thank you so much for that. And I'm so glad you said that thing about sacrifice. I mean, the Latin roots of that word literally mean to make holy. And so that's what's going on all the time in our own spiritual journeys. And I like to think about this. Swedenborg says that there's various levels of meaning inside all of the literal sense of the Bible. And so Karen describing what was going on for Jesus is so powerful. And I just love to think about, in our own stories, like, what of my own big ideas do I need to sacrifice and give up and offer up to the Lord in order to be in a more peaceful spiritual state? Things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just funny that the Bible, as Karen, you were listing all these details and what they mean, and especially when you said, "Oh, the Isaac is one part of Jesus, and Abraham's another part of Jesus," I was like, "Oh yeah, the Bible seems like it's about a lot of people, but it's actually just about one person, because actually it's just about Jesus." But then knowing what's going on with Jesus is about everyone, because he's just kind of living the archetypal version of what we all go through. Because Cara, you're mentioning, oh yeah, what? So then I learned that about Jesus, and so what does that mean about what I do for my little? So it's back to being about everyone.
Yeah.
And last thing I'll say is that look at those details. How many without the idea of correspondences? Those are superfluous details. I mean, the story of Abraham and Isaac is about, are you willing to do what God tells you to do, even if you don't want to do it? Who cares? Oh yeah, there's just lead up. There's some lead up that he had these two servants with him, and that's what you would think if you didn't believe in inner meaning to the Bible. But the deep truth is that all those details mean so much. So that's like, it makes the text. It's not just one part of that story has a lesson to teach. Every part of that story has a lesson to teach. So I think that's important, and that's one of the, I feel like, the messages of Swedenborg is there's so much more in that. And okay, fine. One more thing, which is, because she's at Stephanie's asking about a link between those two things. It's almost like the story, the Jesus Christ story, is what happened during the Lord's life on the external level, like the stuff you could go and see and record. He moved physically, what's going on, whereas these Genesis and Old Testament stories are about what was going on in the mind of Jesus, like in the inner life. So those two things are describing the same process: the near sacrifice of Isaac, the crucifixion of Jesus. It's both about this process of being made divine, but one's telling you what's going on spiritually, while the other's telling what's going on physically.
Yeah. Oh, well said. And I loved the comment from Chinonye there. She said the inner meaning of the Bible is so tender, and I love, inner sense of the word is so tender. And I love how, a story that people have thought, wow, God's saying, sacrifice your son to prove your love to me. It seems so weird and harsh and everything. You get to the inner meaning, and it's so beautiful and so tender and so loving. It's wonderful.
Yeah. For God to say, do you prove that you love me? Sacrifice your son to me. There's no morality in that. There's not like any like Joey Patone, like mob boss guy could do the same thing as that. I don't know. I forget what the real names of the mob boss guys were. But, like to say, would you do that? Like, there's nothing sacred about that. There's nothing admirable about that. And even for Abraham to go through with it wouldn't have even been that great. It's just loyalty. It's just pure loyalty. There's no morality in it. But in the inner sense, there's morality. There's love, and there's things that you would admire even if you weren't forced to, So that's good. All right, let's go. Let's do another one. Why not? This is from Kathy, who asks, rich people, and she's starting by quoting Swedenborg. Man, people are bringing the Swedenborg right to us here. This is a quote from Swedenborg in Heaven and Hell. Rich people in the natural sense are people who have abundant wealth and set their hearts on it, while in a spiritual sense, they are people who are amply supplied with insights and knowledge, for these are spiritual wealth, and who want to use them to get themselves into heavenly and ecclesiastical circles by their own intellect. Since this is contrary to the divine design, it says that it is easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. And then Kathy's asking, somehow I always thought being spiritually rich was understanding that all the love and wisdom are gifts from the Lord and being thankful. So which one is it?
I have a thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, Kathy. That's what spiritually rich means. But two thoughts about that are that I don't know if this is commenting. I didn't look. Sorry, I didn't look at the heaven. Oh, it's talking about Matthew 19. So this is talking about a specific use of the term in this Bible verse. But there's always a positive and a negative correspondence for everything. There's a good kind and a bad kind of what this could mean. So I didn't look at Matthew 19, but there's times when that kind of wealth can be put to not good uses instead of to good uses. So that's just always something to, balance around about what is the point here. But also, I just can't resist saying this part. George Dole, who is a Swedenborgian scholar who's no longer with us, but he was deep into it. He liked to call Swedenborg not a terminologist, but a contextualist. So it's like the way that he used terms depended on the context of what the conversation is, not that it was always exactly the same thing. And I just like that little tip to sort of ride loose in the saddle about how you understand these terms, what you understand them to mean, because the context might shift it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it true that you can't always find a one-to-one correspondence even?
Yeah.
That if you look up an index of correspondences, there's some things that always seem to, but there's places, like I remember when we were researching the story on the Garden of Eden, there's places where, he'll say this corresponds to this, but then in another sense, in another part, he's like, well, this corresponds actually to this, which is a little bit different. So, because I think we're using very few earthly words to describe very complicated spiritual realities. Like, think if you had never encountered a cell, like in cellular biology, and you were trying to describe all the parts of it to someone, but we didn't have any names for that. It was only after people got microscopes and this is the Golgi apparatus, these are the mitochondria, these are the ribosomes, that's the DNA, that's the RNA. Think if you didn't have any of those terms and you were just like trying to describe it and be so remember the circle thing, right? Or the engine, but that engine actually has all these different parts to it.
Yeah, great point. And yeah, as Kara was saying, context is everything in Swedenborg and the Bible. So, the context of rich is sometimes those who have a lot of spiritual knowledge and feel all proud about that and superior and feel like I know a lot of stuff, and they have a hard time getting wise because they're not willing to let more in, not think that they have more to learn. And so therefore the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, that was someone who representing people who have a lot of spiritual knowledge but aren't willing to do anything useful or share it with others and things like that. And Jesus says, blessed are the poor, because the poor just represents in that context knowing that you need the Lord and knowing that you don't have everything yourself. But yeah, as Kara said, and rich, in the positive sense means you have, that Swedenborg describes angels in heaven living in conditions that we would think of as rich. They have these beautiful homes and beautiful circumstances and everything they need, but they don't, they can have that richness because they don't feel proud or superior about it. They are just grateful to the Lord. And so when it's not from you and you don't own it or everything, then you're open to just receiving all this wealth of blessings and knowledge and love and wisdom. So, yeah. Right, we are never done learning, says Penny. So, context.
I'm sorry to keep bringing up the Christmas tree, Kara, but I feel like since you have it up still, that extends the season in which I can talk about the Muppet Christmas Carol as the greatest source of spiritual wisdom, because you have Scrooge in there and he goes from bad rich to good rich in the Muppet Christmas Carol. Because in the beginning, like the whole context is he's a bad rich. He's this miserly guy. He's got tons of money, and yet he's still cruel to people. And that's that's like part of his character. And then that's part of why you're like, this guy's not very good. But then at the end, when he's like helping Bob Cratchit and making this big donation to all these people, he's still rich. But now it's like, it's great that he's rich because he's doing all this stuff with it. It's the same thing with these ideas and the spiritual wealth that Kathy's alluding to. That you can, if you have all these spiritual insights that are true and good, but you use them, but your will is still like, I'm trying to get myself ahead with these things, that's bad rich. But if you have these good insights and you actually believe them, including the one that says it all comes from God, then you're actually spiritually rich. It has to do with what your will doing with that. What you doing with your money? What are you doing with your spiritual money?
Yeah, exactly. Great comments just flashing by from the chat there. Yeah, people, right. It's just it's the context and how you use things, how you use the gifts from God, and makes all the difference.
Cool. If you're just joining us and you want to next week or next month, you want to get your questions answered, become a member. Members ask these questions, and thank you. And if you want to just support us anytime, don't forget Swedenborg.com/donate. Click the link in the description here. Make your gift to us. It's tax deductible if you're in the U.S. 100% of the proceeds go to helping the Swedenborg not-for-profit Swedenborg Foundation do what it does. Question number 4. This is from Ross, who asks, does Swedenborg have anything to say about the role of art entertainment and novelty, and how it can be useful. I feel drawn toward these things, but at the same time, it feels like an incredible waste of time in a world already filled to the brim with distractions and novelties everywhere you look, and many much more serious problems that need to be addressed practically. Is it a waste to dedicate your life to creating entertainment for others in our current context? Can I start this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, man, I mean, you think about all the things the body needs. It needs all this oxygen. The heart has got to be pumping. You've got to have food and water. Is it a waste to make the fingernails grow right now? Like, we don't need that. Or is it a waste? I'm trying to think of something. Is it a waste to make hormones right now? Like the answer is like, you need all the stuff. That yes, there's big problems that have to be addressed, but there's the way that the body works is every little part of it's got to do what it's made for and what it's good at. And I'm not saying, Ross, that I know for sure what you're made for. I think only God really knows that, and it gets unfolded and we have different phases and things. But I'm saying it could well be that if you feel drawn to and love and you come alive with these things, entertainment, it could be that's what you do for the human race. Because the people, let's say that you're an ER doctor and you're out there like really helping in a very tangible way. Like today you took a bullet out of somebody, you stitched somebody, like you did that, and you're tired and exhausted. And when you come home, your mind needs a break. And if it doesn't get that break, tomorrow you're not going to be able to go do it again. And they sit down and turn on your art. And your art is what relaxes them and rejuvenates them. You know, it's all part of one thing. So I would say, you know, the heaven is a kingdom of uses, and there's a use in art. And what I would try to do is, you know, the more and more that, because like art can be great, or it can drag people into all kinds of negative stuff and make that stuff seem tantalizing and interesting. So like if you can make art, that the double whammy is, can you make some art that draws people toward what's good and true? Then it's like, that's like one of the most, because that's like the war for the mind. You know, you're really on the front lines of something there then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. And I agree. Your last point is, you know, only a problem if entertainment and art is kind of stirring up unhealthy, negative, harmful sort of feelings and things like that. Or anything can be overdone. But there is art and entertainment in heaven. It's like Curtis was saying, it's a really important part of the whole picture. And a cool thing about, you know, in heaven, it's obviously a huge important role, like Curtis was saying, is just to give you rejuvenation and relaxation from your, you know, whatever other things you're doing. And therefore some people have to make that art so the world has things to rejuvenate from. But also, like Curtis was saying, if the art can also like steer you toward good stuff in life, you know, if it stirs your heart about good relationships and forgiveness, or, you know, just joy together.
Wasn't I just quoting the Muppet Christmas Carol?
You were.
You know what? My daughter learns lessons from her shows. Like there's times when I'm trying to teach her a moral lesson, and she's like, oh yeah, it's in that episode of so-and-so. And
Exactly.
she believes in that, and she gets that. Somebody just now in the comments said, we need Swedenborgian art. That's true, because throughout it, like that, you try to love and believe in something. Art tips the scales as to whether you do and how attractive it is to people. And like it's no joke. It can be quite useful. Like anything, things can be used, like they can be used for evil or used for good, but don't underestimate the role that plays.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my thought is that, you know, we are created in the image and likeness of God. And who is God? God is the creator. So we've all got this creativity peace in us, even though I see, Nancy, that you said you don't have it. And I often feel like I don't have it either. But we have it in one way or another. There's something that we do, that somehow you find something that manifests something that you care about. And that's the other thing, is that Swedenborg talks about how the Lord leads us through our loves, through what we love. That's what gets us to go, right? That's the carrot. Something that we care about gets us to do stuff. And so if you care about making a cool painting or a cool video game or whatever, and try to use it to the best of your ability for the highest purposes, as Curtis talks about, that's the Lord getting you to do what he created you to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Enjoyment and pleasure are spiritual food, along with love and kindness and all that. And some of the things Swedenborg describes in heaven when they're having their recreation time are shows, plays. He would be saying plays. We could be thinking of more in terms of videos. But there are comedy shows, and he says comedy shows like the buffoon is how it was translated, and the quote I'm thinking of, is a depiction of the goofy parts of ego that just mess everything up, and then you see more clearly how life is supposed to go, and so people can laugh and have a good time and learn something too. And also somebody in the chat mentioned music. In heaven, there's this beautiful description Swedenborg has about in the morning, this choir of young women is singing this song, and it stirs everyone who's waking up to just get their minds and hearts in a certain place where they can really then get started in their day. And we know music can do that for us. So there's all sorts of ways that art and entertainment can just enhance our ability to be useful, good people.
Yep. And I think Peggy made the point there that it's like, you can be creative in a number of things. It doesn't even have to be art. It can be cooking, baking, working.
Yeah.
I think what you want to get to, I think with art, it tends to go like the pendulum goes too far. Either art is useless or it's like the greatest thing. Like I grew up in a generation that idolized musicians and like, oh, that's the greatest thing that could possibly be, and didn't care at all about the engineers that made the stuff that allows you to live. I think like in heaven, it's like the body, like the elbow completely gets what's so cool about the pancreas, and like everyone, it's everything is so shared that's like, oh, everything is equally venerated and valuable, and then you really go. Okay, we got to go to the next question. Well, come on, there's only so many hours in a day, but great question, Ross.
Lots of cool comments too. Thanks, people.
Yeah, everybody. Thanks for hanging. Thanks for sharing your opinions, your voice. This is Linda75. She asks, if Christ fully defeated Satan in 1757, why do we still have evil in the world? Wasn't Satan supposed to be chained up for 1,000 years? It's like I heard you say, like we've said on this channel, there's the last judgment happened in the year 1757 in the spiritual world. So the world is fixed, right? But it doesn't seem that way. So what's going on there?
First of all, I would say that 1757 thing, like Curtis just referred to, that was about a happening in the spiritual world, not the physical world. And like at the time that Jesus came, when according to Swedenborg, Jesus's advent was about cleaning up the spiritual world so that hell wasn't so powerful there that there was no longer a balance between the influence from heaven on us and the influence from hell on us. And so that it's just an important distinction to make. Spiritual world or earth. Yeah, that's my first comment. Take it away, folks.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. it's the whole book of Revelation is describing events that happened in the spiritual world and that happen in our minds. And so, like Kara was saying, there was an event that happened in the spiritual world in 1757. Swedenborg saw it happen. It was this whole reordering and clearing things up so that better things can now be trickling down to the earth level. But it just began a process where we can start to be more interested in spiritual things, understand them better, make choices. And but that story, it's a fascinating little story that part in the book of Revelation is describing. And I do have just some bullet points from the symbolism, because what that's bound for 1,000 years, that's about this scene in the book of Revelation where the dragon, the red dragon that had been causing all sorts of trouble, was bound for 1,000 years, and an angel came down and bound that dragon. And so just a summary of what Swedenborg says about that little section is that an angel coming down means in the spiritual world, God's power came down into the lower regions of the spiritual world. The world of spirits is where, in between heaven and hell, where all the corruption had built up, false leaders and with negative agendas and things like that. So God's power came down. The dragon represented the corrupt leaders in the world of spirits that were teaching faith alone and with never mind goodwill and all sorts of things that were causing trouble and preventing good people from being able to progress towards heaven because they were so confused, right, by these teachers that they trusted. So binding that dragon for 1,000 years was representing this forcible separation of these corrupt leaders from the rest of the people in the world of spirits for a while. Numbers, 1,000 years just means for as long as it was needed. Shut that, those leaders aside so that these people could safely make their way to heaven. And then when they had crossed at this certain time, the people that had been blocked, then those leaders had to be allowed to come back into the general world of spirits and go through their process. So that's what that is about, as far as what happened in 1757.
Yeah, that's great. Yep, it's the last judgment doesn't necessarily mean the final judgment forever. I think that's a wrinkle Swedenborg introduces, is that it's more like the fourth quarter in basketball. That's the last quarter, but there's another game. So there was a last judgment at the end of each of these eras. That last judgment was sort of the end of the initial Christian era, and now we're in the beginnings of the era that he says is like the second coming of Christ. But also, like, you can't fully defeat Satan.
Yeah.
Because a bunch of people would die. Like Satan is not an individual. According to Swedenborg, there's not Satan as in he's a conscious being that lives on his own apart from God somehow, who is intrinsically evil. Satan is the name you give to all people who are deluded, captured, embracing falsities. And that's what's driving them. So if you just yank that out of there, so many people, their life consists in that they, God has got to protect the people in hell just like he protects the people in heaven. So it's like a more delicate process. It's like slowly extricating and changing and mitigating the influence of hell. So even if things may be on an upward trajectory, there's a lot of time, and everybody who chooses the different kinds of evils, which can be represented by this concept of Satan, it makes it take longer. You're making it take longer because now God's got to deal with that. That you balance. It's up to us. We're players in this. If everybody today somehow just chose, like, I'm going to regenerate my heart out, like I'm just going to absolutely shun evil, do what is good. Things could change very quickly, but people make their choices, and that can extend the timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. An angel near in the chat is pointing out that, and this is true, Swedenborg says this, that when the Bible is talking about increments of time or numbers or things, it just means a while in the spiritual world, meaning just a stage.
Yeah, we're on island time in the Bible. It's like, yeah,
a stage, like until it's finished. Until
when it's done. It'll be done when it's done.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go to the next one. Come on, there's so much more good things. Thanks so much, Linda, for that question. Kevin asks, do you think that the heavenly doctrine in the writings can function as a kind of key to unlock the universal spiritual truths that are contained in the sacred scriptures of other cultures? For example, can the language of correspondences be applied to the Tao Te Ching? Is that how you pronounce that? Or the Vedas or Bhagavad Gita? Would this open the inner meaning of those scriptures as well? My apologies, I can't attend because I'm at work, but I can check the recorded video later if you get this question. Hello, good to see you.
Hi, Kevin.
Thank you very much in advance.
Oh yeah, I'd say yes.
Yep.
Because from what Swedenborg learned, symbolism from the ancient word, there was this ancient word which was the first written version of spiritual knowledge, and it was written all in symbolism. And Swedenborg learned that kind of got lost, but parts of it or stories or themes from it went into all the different cultures and all the sacred scriptures that turned into different religions and mythologies and things. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I do see that when I delve into other religious scriptures or mythology traditions and things. I see that symbolism in there, and it's so fascinating. And according to what Swedenborg learned, the full unbroken entire story was just preserved in our modern, what became our Judeo-Christian Bible, but that doesn't mean that there aren't parts of it and that same symbolism in all sorts of ancient scriptures. And I do feel like, yeah, you can see it in there, and you can grasp meanings if you know something about that symbolism, which is very cool.
You didn't already say this, right? But doesn't he specifically do that to like the story of Pegasus in Greek mythology?
Yes.
He says, that's why Pegasus is portrayed as a horse with wings, because it's about the understanding, like that. There's that all over the place. It's the same language. Yeah, correspondences is real, and it's something that the human race used to know. It was a lot of it, but a lot of mythology. And I'm sure you got these creation myths, which are there was a great bear that did something, or there was a big turtle that did. I'm sure there's correspondences in that.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not well versed in the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas, but like the story of Krishna, there's a lot of parallels to the Jesus story, and yeah, absolutely in there. And yeah, that is something that Swedenborg specifically gives as an example, is the Greek myths, and seeing the symbols as correspondential.
He says that's why he over and over mentions Egyptian hieroglyphics. That's why it's a pictorial language, is because it's correspondences based.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. Let's do another question. This is GK asking us about some of the most difficult biblical verses, and how can you possibly have these in the book of God? So he said, GK asks, why Lot offered his daughters to be raped, why incest was committed with his daughters when he was drunk. What is the meaning or symbolism? Thank you. It's like, can you clear this up? Like, I thought, hey, I've got this book from God. This is a great book from God, the Bible. Let me open it up and read it to my family. Oh, no. It's the worst stuff you can, like, what's this? So what does Swedenborg have to say about that?
Yeah, and Swedenborg says right out that, in the literal sense, there's some really dreadful, dreadful situations and stories. And it's quite a challenge, especially with these more like sort of historical narratives, to detach from the literal story, and to see it as a symbolic story about our minds and about the development of church spiritual eras and churches and things like that. So I can share some, a few of the things about, again, that's in his Secrets of Heaven in great detail.
Hey, can I cut you off before you start? Because I just saw a question just went down there, or comment just went down there that was like, I struggle with some of the more brutal parts of the Bible also. You might think me being the host of this show, and I talk about Swedenborg all the time and the Bible all the time, I wouldn't struggle with that. But I remember not so long ago, like I was just, all right, I'll read some of this Bible here. And there was this story about this thing that happened in the Old Testament. And I was like, I can't read this. Like, even though I know, it's correspondences, everything we're about to tell you here, I was still like, sorry, I can't get that out of my mind, So it's totally, we get it. Sorry,
yes,
go ahead.
And we have a show called "It Is Damaging to Take the Bible Literally," which goes into that, like, so it's just
too hard. Sorry, but because Swedenborg says that you actually can see correspondences more easily in things like the prophets and Psalms, where the language is already kind of spacey, and you're like, oh yeah, there must be some hidden meaning here. But it's harder in the narrative parts because you think, oh no, this is just a story. I would imagine it's the hardest in the narrative parts that you find morally repugnant, because there's so much of a red light flashing of like, why is this propagating this? Why didn't this God stop this? So yeah, it makes total sense that it'd be very hard. Nevertheless, as Karin is about to explain, those details are in there, and the inner meaning, as someone already said, is always beautiful or uplifting.
Or descriptive of a spiritual process. Like,
yes.
Usually all the stories about like men and women coming together, they're all about different ways that truth and love, or evil and falsity, come together. That's the short story. So like, if you love cruelty like that, or you love some lie about something or other, like, that's a mismatch, right? That's a pair that does not belong together. Love and falsity. So it just, shorthand, anything about all that kind of stuff is like the wrong things coming together on the truth side and the love side, the good side and the wisdom side, the falsity side and the evil side. So, okay, Karin.
That's great.
Say it better now.
Okay. No, that's all very, very true. And I gotta give it a try to give you a few thoughts, but it's challenging. And so I'll just give you some things to start it. First, I want to just quick read this verse, because the other thing is the wording is very significant, and the wording actually doesn't have rape in here. So this is Genesis 19:8. This is Lot saying to these men who want to come in, and they do seem to want to rape the angels who came in to the city, and Lot is protecting in his home. And Lot says, "Look, please, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do with them as is good in your eyes. Only don't do anything to these men, because you see, they have come into the shade of my roof beam." And yeah, probably in the literal story, what that would have resulted in rape and everything, but it doesn't say that. It says, it's more saying, enjoy them. And I just mentioned that because that has to do with the inner meaning. And so Lot represents, so like Kara was saying, some of the stories are just a description of a process, a spiritual process. And this story about Lot and his family living in Sodom is about Lot is a basically good person living in a very evil city, and Sodom represents self-centeredness, like the desire to dominate others and have it all be about yourself. And Lot represents just a very external kind of goodness, like that doesn't really think hard about if this is true or not, or if this is just sort of very external goodness. So it's vulnerable to self-absorption or falsity and things like that. And so he's living there. And so the whole story is about trying to get our like external mind out of self-centeredness when it doesn't realize the danger it's in and things like that. So Lot is this earthly level kind of goodness without any depth. So his daughters always represent an affection for something. And so his daughters represent an affection for truth, like wanting some truth, wanting some goodness. But since they're the daughters of Lot, they don't know. Like they're just they're not deep or anything. And so to this men of Sodom is being that is like saying to self-centeredness to start a process. Like, okay, don't assault the presence of the Lord inside yourself or inside another person, which is what is represented by the angels. You can enjoy just some earthly feelings. You can enjoy just some earthly thoughts. Just go ahead and enjoy those, because that can be a starting gate towards something better. So enjoy some earthly desires, earthly feelings, earthly thoughts. Don't assault the presence of the Lord. I'm not doing a good job of articulating that, but
no, it makes sense. It makes sense. And
yes.
That's the nature of the inner sense. It's like actually talking about something that's very different than what's happening in the literal story. But the teams have switched, the message has switched, the moral switch, but you can see the connection to the pieces there.
So it's not talking about people. It's not talking about some women. Just do whatever you want to them. It's here's some outer feelings. Just engage with that instead of get off this agenda to assault deep spiritual ideas. Just like
it's not. And remember, the Bible's not about a lot of people. It's only about one person.
Yeah.
And in this case, that one person is you. So all those different parts in that story are different. That's your own mind interacting around, and this is about how that takes some of the tension out of it. It's not about should some people be treated well or not. This is about what goes on inside of you. Let's leave that one there for now, because I want to end just on a sort of a lighter fare.
Oh, could I quick say something about the incest?
There we go. Yeah.
So that's so Lot is he's escaping Sodom. He's told go to the mountains, and he says, well, how about instead I just go to this little cave sort of halfway up, not all the way to the mountain. And that's about it was a phase in the church, as Swedenborg calls it, like the spiritual involvement in humankind being called, like, go to love, and the response was, how about we just go here to ideas instead? And in that situation, the affections, like when it's not coming from pure love, there's just sort of this lower level feelings that produce ideas that are sort of incestuous, like they just sort of confirm each other. They don't really produce something higher. That's the fastest way I could say it, but it's a description of a church not becoming as good as it should have become because of choices. Like, no, I think we'll just stay here and we'll just like interact with our own thoughts and feelings and not seek something higher.
Let no one say we shied away from anything. You asked, we answered. The final question for today, since it's already been an hour. Can you believe that?
That's going to take. I'm just wondering if we should save for next time, because
I think we can do it. Well,
okay.
Because I think it's like we can go a few minutes over, but I think there's relatively straightforward. This is from Janone, who asks, greeting to you, Curtis, and everyone out there. My question is, was Swedenborg connected to any Freemasonry society in his lifetime?
Do you want me to get started?
Not that we know of, right? Not that we know of is the short answer. There's no evidence of it in his own writings or letters or anything.
yeah, in all his, the thing I tell people when because there is an idea out there. There's an idea out there that he was. But I like to point out, like, all his personal journals and, all his letters, and there's nothing about that. Absolutely no evidence of that. And the reason, actually, I was reading in this book, which is a new book by the Swedenborg Foundation, The New Church in the New World, just gives a history of the whole Swedenborgian movement. After Swedenborg's death, there were these Masonic groups, and there was a certain one in one of those groups that found Swedenborg's books and was really interested. And then after Swedenborg's death, another member of that group created something called the Swedenborg Rite, like made a RIT rite in the Masonic their group that was named after Swedenborg. And then they were also trying to connect with Swedenborgians and sort of invite them into their groups. And so some people have thought that meant Swedenborg was involved in those groups, but he wasn't. That was established after his death, and then that fizzled out, that Swedenborg Rite. I don't even know what it was.
There you go. The answer: in his lifetime, no. Thanks for the questions, everybody.
Thanks you.
Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Karin. That was super fun.
And we're going to get to the other. We had more questions, and we'll save them for next month. They will all get answered.
We'll take care of you. And are we going to members chat right now?
To the Swedenborg Foundation membership is coming into a Zoom group with us to have a little after chat. If you wanna join Swedenborg Foundation community membership, you can go after these shows. You can come and do a little debrief, and we want to hear your thoughts about it as well. That's where we're hopping off to now. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for your donations and your membership. See ya. Thank you. Bye bye.